Well, good afternoon, guys. Welcome again to attend my online class session, Managerial Accounting. Today, we are going to start a new chapter, Responsibility Accounting and Performance Evaluation. In the previous two chapters, we focused on the budgets, which is for planning, directing, and controlling business activities. Well, in the planning stage, companies look forward to future accounting periods and set goals. In the directing stage, managers coordinate the company's day-to-day activities, including purchasing, manufacturing, and selling. While in the controlling stage, companies compare actual performance with the goals and take actions. Well, in this chapter, we again look at the budgets, but in a slightly different context. First, we consider how different types of business units need to be evaluated in different ways. And then we also consider the use of non-financial measures for measuring the performance. Well, first of all, let's see why companies decentralize and use responsibility accounting. Here, let's look at some small companies where the owner or top executives often make the direct planning, directing, and controlling decisions. Well, these small companies often considered to be some centralized companies because centralized decisions making is easier due to the smaller scope of their operations. But in some big companies, or as the company grows, it is impossible for a single person or a single team to manage the entire organization's daily operations. So, most companies decentralize as they grow. Here is the definition of decentralized companies. Decentralized companies split their operations into different segments, such as departments and divisions. The advantage of decentralization. The advantage are fivefold. First, it frees top management line. By delegating responsibility for daily operations to business segment managers, top managers can concentrate on long-term strategic planning and higher-level decisions that affect the entire company. Second, decentralization supports use of expert knowledge. Decentralization allows top management to hire the expertise each business segment needs to excel in its own specific operations. For example, decentralizing by state allows companies to hire managers with specialized knowledge of consumer demand for product or service. Such specialized knowledge can help segment managers to make better decisions. Third, decentralization also improves customer relations. Segment managers focus on just one segment of the companies, so they can maintain closer contact with important customers than can upper management. So decentralization often leads to improved customer relations and quicker customer response time. Number 4, decentralization provides training. It provides segment managers with training and experience necessary to become effective top managers. For example, companies often choose CEOs based on their past performance as division managers. And lastly, it improves motivation and retention. Empowering segment managers to make decisions increases managers' motivation and retention. This improves job performance and job satisfaction. But despite its advantages, decentralization can also cause some potential problems. First problem is duplication of cost. For example, each business segment may hire its own payroll department and purchase its own payroll software. Companies can often avoid such duplication by providing centralized services. For example, a hotel chain might segment its business by property, yet each property might share one centralized reservation office and one centralized website. The second problem is it may achieve goal congruence. So goal congruence occurs when segment managers' goals align with the top management's goals. Decentralized companies often struggle to achieve goal congruence. Segment manager may not fully understand the big picture of the company. They may take decisions that are good for its own decision, but may probably harm another division or the rest of the company, the entire company. Decentralized companies delegate responsibility for specific decisions to each subunit, creating responsibility centers. So here, let's get to know what are 4 types of responsibility centers. Well, first of all, what is a responsibility center? A responsibility center is a part of the organization for which a manager has decision-making authority and accountability for the results of those decisions. Each manager is responsible for planning, directing, and controlling some parts of the company's activities in each responsibility center. But lower level managers are often responsible for budgeting, directing, and controlling costs of a single value chain functions. Well, decentralized companies need a way to evaluate the responsibility center. This is called responsibility accounting system, which is a system for evaluating the performance of each responsibility center. And the goal of the system's performance reports is to provide relevant information to the managers empowered to make such decisions. So here are the 4 types of responsibility centers: cost center, revenue center, profit center, and investment center. First, cost center. In the cost center, the manager is only responsible for controlling cost. Manufacturing operations, such as the tablet computer production line at the at our previous example in a smart touch learning company. This is a cost center. I mean, the manufacturing operations or the production of tablet computer. The line foreman controls costs by monitoring material costs, repair and maintenance costs, employee costs, and employee efficiency. The manager of cost center is not responsible for generating revenues because the manager is not involved in selling the product. The manager the manager in cost center of a cost center is only responsible for controlling the cost. The plant manager evaluates the foreman at cost center on his or her ability to control the cost by comparing actual cost to budgeted cost. And also, the responsibility reports for the cost center includes only cost. The second type is revenue center. Well, in the revenue center, as you have guessed, that the manager is only responsible for generating revenues. An example is a kiosk machine that sells sunglasses at a local mall. This is an example of a revenue center. The business is part of a chain, so the local manager doesn't control cost. The merchandise inventory is purchased by a central purchasing department, and the rent paid to the mall is negotiated by the cooperative office. Company procedures indicates only one employee should be in the booth. So the local manager has little control over wage expenses. The primary responsibility of a manager is to generate revenue by selling sunglasses. So that's why such a kiosk is considered as a revenue center. And also, the responsibility reports for a revenue center includes only revenues. Third type, profit center. In the profit center, as the name suggests, the manager is responsible for generating revenue and controlling costs. By generating revenue and controlling costs, it results, as you know, the profits. An example is a manager responsible for a grocery store. That manager should be responsible for increasing sales revenue and controlling the costs to achieve the profit goals. The manager controls costs by ordering sufficient merchandise inventory to meet the sales demands without having excessive spoilage from outdated food products, and scheduling the workers to have sufficient customer service without paying more than necessary in wages. Regarding to the responsibility reports, the responsibility reports in profit center includes both revenues and expenses to show the profit center's operating income. The last type is investment center. In the investment center, the manager is responsible for generating profits and efficiently managing the center's invested capitals. Managers of investment centers, for example, division managers of a chain of a store, should be responsible for generating sales, controlling expenses, managing the amount of investment in the capital expenditure required to earn the income, and planning future investments for growth and expansion. The division manager has limited funds and has to decide which store will receive a renovation. And when a new computerized inventory system will be installed, these long-term investments are purchased with the intent to increase profits. So in the investment center, the managers of investment center should be evaluated on how well the center uses the investments to generate profits. So this is a slide that summarizes the types of responsibility center, as well as the manager's responsibilities and the responsibility reports. Okay, now let's revisit our previous example, smart touch learning. This slide shows how it's assigned responsibility. At the top level, as you can see, the president or the CEO oversees each of the two vice presidents. The vice president oversees two divisions. Division managers generally have broad responsibility, including deciding how to use assets to maximize return on investments. Well, most companies classify divisions as investment center. Each division manager supervises all the activities in that division. So as you can see on this slide, it shows the tablet computer division manager oversees the production of two product lines: standard tablets and premium tablets. Product lines are generally considered as a profit center. So the manager of the standard tablets product line is responsible for evaluating lower level managers of both the cost center and revenue center. All right, next, let's get to know the performance evaluation system and a very commonly used system, which is called Balanced Scorecard. First of all, what is performance evaluation system and how it is used? Once a company decentralizes operations, top management is no longer involved in running the subunits' day-to-day operations. So here, performance evaluation systems provide top management with a framework for maintaining control over the entire organization. When companies decentralize, as I said, but when the company decentralizes, the top management needs the system to evaluate each subunit. In addition, top management needs to determine whether the decisions being made at the subunit level are effectively meeting the company's goal. Goals of performance evaluation system include these 5 points: promoting goal congruence and coordination, communicating expectations, motivating segment managers, providing feedback and benchmark. First, promoting goal congruence and coordination. Well, as I previously mentioned, decentralization increases the difficulty of achieving goal congruence because segment managers may not always make decisions consistent with the overall goals. A company will be able to achieve its goals only if each unit moves in a synchronized fashion towards the overall company goals. The performance evaluation system should provide incentives for coordinating the subunits' activities and direct them towards achieving the overall company goals. Communicating expectations. To make decisions that are consistent with the company's goals, segment managers must know the goals and the specific part their units plays in attaining these goals. The performance evaluation system should spell out the unit's most critical objectives with a clear picture of what upper managers expect. The segment managers can direct their daily operating decisions so those expectations are met. Motivating. Segment managers are usually motivated to make decisions that will help to achieve top management's expectations. For additional motivation, upper management may offer bonus to segment managers who meet or exceed performance targets. Top management must exercise extreme care in setting performance targets. Providing feedback. So, as noted earlier, in decentralized companies, top management is not involved in the day-to-day operations. So, performance evaluation system provides the upper managers with the feedback it needs to maintain control over the entire organization, even though it has delegated responsibility and decision-making authorities to the segment managers. If the targets are not met at the unit level, upper management will take corrective actions. And lastly, benchmarking. Performance evaluation results are often used for benchmarking, which is the practice of comparing the company's achievements against the best practice in this industry. Companies also benchmark performance against the subunit's past performance. Historical trend data could help managers assess whether their decisions are improving or adversely affecting subunits' performance. Some companies also benchmark performance against other subunits with similar characteristics. Comparing results against industry benchmarks is often more revealing than companies' results against budgets or past performance. To survive nowadays, the companies must keep up with its competitors. So here, benchmarking helps the company to determine whether it is performing at least as well as other competitors. In the past, performance measurements revolved almost entirely around financial performance. On the other hand, this focus makes sense because the ultimate goal of a company is to generate profit. On the other hand, current financial performance tends to reveal the results of past actions rather than indicate future performance. For this reason, financial measures tend to be lag indicators rather than lead indicators. Management needs to know the results of past decisions, but managers also need to know how current decisions may affect the future. To adequately assess the company, the managers need both lead indicator and lag indicators. Another limitation of financial performance measures is that they tend to focus on the company's short-term achievements rather than long-term performance, because financial statements are prepared on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. To remain competitive, top management needs clear goal signals that assess and predict the company's performance over long periods of time. So here, in this textbook, Balance Scorecard is introduced as a performance evaluation system. It is a performance evaluation system that requires managers to consider both financial performance measures and operational performance measures. Well, these measures should be linked with the company's goals and the company's strategy for achieving these goals. Keeping score of operating measures and the traditional financial measures gives management a balanced view of the organization, because management needs to consider other critical factors such as customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, and employee excellence. Imbalance scorecard methods, KPI, that stands for Key Performance Indicator, are used to evaluate different perspectives in the balance scorecard. And a KPI is a summary performance measure that helps managers assess whether the company is achieving its goals. Well, to evaluate the company, the balance scorecard requires managers to look at 4 different perspectives: financial perspective, customer perspective, internal business perspective, and learning and growth perspective. So this is I will show these slides showing the summary of the balance scorecard and gives examples of KPI for each perspective. And with this slide and next slide showing, I will explain each perspective one by one. Well, the first, as I said, the first perspective is financial perspective. This perspective helps managers answer the question like, how do we look to investors and creditors? Well, as you know, the ultimate goal of for-profit companies is to generate income. So company strategy revolves around increasing the company's profits through increasing revenue growth and productivity. Companies grow revenue by introducing new products, gaining new customers, and increasing sales to existing customers. Companies increase productivity through reducing costs and using the company's assets more efficiently. The financial perspective focuses on management's attention on KPI that assess financial objectives such as revenue growth or cost cutting. Second perspective, the second one, customer perspective. This perspective helps managers evaluate the question like, how do customers see us? Evaluating customer satisfaction is critical to achieving the company's financial goals outlined in the financial perspective of a balanced scorecard. Customers are typically concerned with 4 specific products or service attributes: the price, the quality, the product's performance, and the product's delivery time. Because each of these attributes is critical to making the customer happy. Most companies have specific objectives for each of these attributes. The third perspective is internal business perspective. So this perspective helps managers address the question like, at what business process must we excel to meet customer and financial objectives? Well, as you can see, this is a much higher perspective that considers both business process and customer objective. The answer to this question incorporates 3 factors: the innovation, operation, and post-sale services. All these three factors would critically affect customer satisfaction, which will finally affect the company's financial success. Satisfying customers only once doesn't guarantee the future success, which is why the first important factor of the internal business perspective is innovation. Customers' needs and wants would constantly change. Just a few years ago, self-driving cars and 3D printers did not exist. But nowadays, it exists. So the companies must continually improve existing products and develop new products to satisfy the customers. The second factor of the internal business perspective is operations. Lean and effective internal operations allow the company to meet customers' needs and expectations while remaining competitive. The third factor of the internal business perspective is post-sales services. Because claims of accident post-sales services also help the company to generate more sales. Well, this is internal business perspective. The last perspective is learning and growth perspective. This perspective helps managers assess the question like how can we continue to improve and create value? This perspective also focuses on three factors. First, employee capabilities. Second, information system capabilities. And third, the company's climate for action. The learning and growth perspective lays the foundation needed to improve internal business operations, sustain the customer satisfaction, and generate financial success. Without skilled employees, as well as updated technologies and positive corporate culture, the company will not be able to meet the objective of other perspectives. Well, this is the last part of this class. We will look at the difference between responsibility reports, responsibility reports, and performance reports. So before looking at this difference, we need to know what is responsibility reports. Well, responsibility reports are actually the performance reports that capture the financial performance of cost, revenue, and profit centers with a focus on responsibility and control. As you may recall, that performance reports compare actual results with budgeted amounts and display a variance between these two amounts because cost centers are only responsible for controlling the cost. Their performance reports include only information on actual cost versus the budgeted cost. And likewise, the performance reports for revenue centers contain only actual revenue versus budgeted revenue. But for profit centers, as you may recall, profit centers are responsible for both controlling costs and generating revenue. So their performance reports contain actual and budgeted information on both revenue and cost. Next, let's get to know controllable cost versus non-controllable cost. A controllable cost is a cost that a manager has the power to influence by his or her decisions. All costs are ultimately controllable at the upper level of management, but controllability decreases as responsibility decreases. This means lower level management has responsibility for a limited number of costs. Responsibility accounting attempts to associate the costs with the manager who has control over the cost. Performance reports are prepared for each segment of business. Performance reports includes all the expenses that the segment manager may or may not be able to control. For example, allocated corporate costs are included in the performance report, but it's not controlled by the segment manager. Well, responsibility reports are also prepared for each segment of a business. Responsibility reports only include expenses that the manager has control over, because these reports are used to evaluate the performance of the segment manager. If a segment manager cannot control a cost, it is not included in this segment's responsibility reports. For example, allocated corporate costs are not included in the responsibility reports. Well, let's look at the difference between responsibility reports and performance reports. First of all, for the cost center. Cost center responsibility reports typically focus on the flexible budget variance, that is, the difference between actual results and the flexible budget. So the flexible budget variance highlights the differences caused by change in cost, not by changes in sales or production volume. As you can see on this slide, it illustrates the difference between a performance report and responsibility report for a cost center. The performance report shows all the costs incurred by the department. It includes the salaries, wages, and payroll benefits. The other expenses listed on the reports are direct costs of that department. This report is useful when management needs to know the full cost of operating that department. But as you can see, some items are included in the performance report, but are not included in the responsibility report. Well, these three items are salaries, payroll benefits, and equipment depreciation. These three items. Why it is not included in the responsibility reports? Well, simply because the segment manager doesn't have the control over these three items, as I said before. For salaries, the department manager doesn't have control. For payroll benefits, like the cost such as health insurance, should be determined at higher level and of course not controlled by the department manager. And other payroll costs such as payroll taxes are determined by law and also not controlled by this department manager. Same thing for equipment depreciation. The department manager doesn't have the authority to make investment decisions. And of course, it's not responsible for such costs. So next, let's see the revenue center. Revenue center responsibility reports often highlights both the flexible budget variance and the sales volume variance. The responsibility reports the example responsibility report for the premium budget sales department of the smartest learning company is shown on this slide. It shows detailed sales volume and revenue. for each type of premium tablet computer sold. And lastly, the responsibility reports for profit center. As you know, the managers of profit centers should be responsible for both generating revenue and controlling costs. So this performance reports includes both revenue and expenses. Well, this slide shows the performance reports, and this slide shows the responsibility reports for the profit center. First of all, let's look at the performance reports. Notice how this profit center performance report contains a line called traceable fixed expense. Traceable fixed expense. Well, as I just explained in the early of this chapter, one drawback of decentralization is that subunits may duplicate costs or assets. Many companies avoid this problem by providing centralized service departments where several subunits share the assets or the costs. When subunits share centralized services, management must decide how to allocate those costs to the various segments that utilize this service. If the costs are not allocated, the subunit's performance reports will not include any charge for using those services. However, if they are allocated, the performance reports will show a charge for traceable portion of this expense, as shown on this slide, on this performance report. As you know, most companies charge subunits for their use of centralized services because subunits would incur a cost to buy those services on its own. And an alternative, it could outsource payroll. For example, if the payroll service is not centralized and the costs are not allocated as an alternative, it would outsource payroll to an outside company. But you should keep in mind that even if the department is charged for the services, the charge would most likely be included in the department's performance reports, but not be included in the responsibility report. Responsibility accounting holds the managers with the most influence for the cost accountable for the cost. The manager for one type of product was most likely to have any control over other decisions made for that processing department. So this is the difference between responsibility reports and performance reports. Well, in the next class, I'm going to introduce some non-financial measures to evaluate the performance of a department or of the entire organization. Well, I will see you on this Wednesday. That's the end of this class. Also, please let me know if you have any other questions. No? All right. Bye-bye. See you this Wednesday. Bye.